Every gardener wants their compost pile to come alive fast, not in weeks, but within days. We want that rich, warm microbial energy that breaks down waste and builds real humus. Yet, even the most experienced composters overlook one ingredient that can flip the microbial switch almost instantly. It's banned from most composting guides, avoided by city programs, and often misunderstood because when used wrong, it can kill a pile. But when handled properly, it becomes one of the most powerful microbial activators in the natural world. That ingredient is fermented dairy waste, specifically sour milk, spoiled yogurt, or whey. Why this ingredient got banned from composting guides? Dairy waste has a bad reputation. Municipal composting programs blacklist it for good reason. It attracts pests, creates odors, and turns anaerobic if dumped carelessly. But the Amish and traditional farmers of Europe quietly used it for generations as a biological starter for soil microbes. They didn't pour it into piles. They diluted it and used it like a tonic, feeding the living layer of compost the same way you'd feed a sourdough starter. The problem with modern composting advice is that it treats all dairy waste as contaminants rather than catalysts. Sour milk and yogurt contain lactic acid bacteria, lactobacillus, which break down tough cellulose and suppress harmful microbes. When used in balance, these bacteria ignite microbial life and speed decomposition by days, sometimes even overnight. The science behind why fermented dairy wakes up a compost pile. Lactic acid bacteria are natural decomposers found in all fertile soil. They thrive in slightly acidic, moist environments, converting sugars and starches into organic acids that feed the next stage of microbial succession. In early compost stages, piles tend to go alkaline as ammonia forms from protein breakdown. This shift can slow down or even stall decomposition. Lactic acid bacteria rebalance that chemistry, lowering pH slightly, creating the perfect conditions for actinomycetes, the microbes that form the white threads in mature compost, to take over. When the Amish used whey or sour milk in compost, they weren't just feeding microbes, they were steering the direction of decomposition. A compost pile treated with lactic bacteria digests faster, smells cleaner, and produces more stable humus. That's why piles treated this way heat up quickly, within 24 hours, and hold steady temperatures instead of fluctuating wildly. How to apply it correctly so you don't ruin your compost. The trick is dilution and timing. Never pour raw milk or thick yogurt directly into your pile. Instead, make a microbe brew that's about 1 part sour milk or whey to 10 parts non-chlorinated water. For example, 1 cup of spoiled yogurt mixed into 1 liter of water works perfectly. Pour this evenly over fresh compost layers, especially when adding new green material like grass clippings, fruit scraps, or manure. The lactic bacteria will inoculate the pile, breaking down those fresh nitrogen sources faster while suppressing the foul-smelling anaerobes that cause rot. For larger compost systems, use 1 liter of diluted dairy mix for every cubic meter of compost material. Apply it only once or twice a month during active decomposition. You don't need more. Lactic bacteria multiply rapidly when moisture and organic matter are available. Overuse can make the pile too acidic, so balance it with dry browns like shredded straw, cardboard, or sawdust. So, here's a forgotten trick: pairing your fermented dairy with molasses or brown sugar. Traditional soil builders would often mix a small amount of molasses with their fermented dairy to feed the microbes right away. The sugar basically acts as a starter meal for the bacteria, waking them up before they get to work on those more complex materials. Just 1 tablespoon of molasses per liter of your diluted dairy mix is enough. You can pour this solution over the pile as you turn it, or, if you prefer, spray it with a garden sprayer to get a nice, even distribution. Within about 24 hours, you should notice the heat rising, the smell shifting from raw to earthy, and the pile starting to transform a whole lot faster. You can also use this same mixture as a soil drench, especially for beds that are recovering from chemical fertilizers. Just 1 cup of your diluted solution per gallon of irrigation water will boost those beneficial bacteria in depleted soil and help neutralize any leftover salts. And in gardens with compacted clay, this microbial inoculant helps unlock trapped nutrients and gradually builds up that crumb structure over time. So, What makes this method better than the usual compost starters or boosters you find at the store? Well, commercial compost starters usually rely on dormant spores that can activate pretty slowly and, honestly, a bit inconsistently. Lactic bacteria, though, are already alive and working the moment you add them. They don't just break down organic waste, they actually set the stage for fungal networks, earthworms, and nematodes to move in. In other words, this isn't just a one-time microbial burst. It's really the foundation for a living soil ecosystem. The reason this method is rarely taught is because it demands precision. It's not a dump-and-go trick, you know. The balance between acidity, moisture, and carbon must be maintained. But once you learn to manage that balance, you'll see results that most composters never experience. Faster humus formation, stable microbial colonies, and compost that smells like a living forest floor instead of wet garbage. Turning banned waste into your soil's strongest ally. Fermented dairy waste was never the enemy. Neglect and overuse were. When treated as a microbial inoculant instead of a waste product, it transforms compost from a slow heap of decay into a living culture. The Amish understood this balance instinctively. Their soil didn't depend on high inputs of manure or fertilizers because their microbial life stayed balanced year-round. Start small. Add a single diluted dose to your next compost batch. Track the temperature, the smell, and the texture over a few days. You'll see how a forgotten kitchen waste once banned from composting guides can become your fastest path to humus. When you unlock this method, you're not just speeding decomposition, you're building the foundation for long-term fertility. Microbes multiply faster, the compost stabilizes cleaner, and your plants feed from a deeper, more active soil network. If this guide helped you uncover how a simple, forgotten ingredient can supercharge your compost overnight, share it with fellow gardeners and subscribe to Hydrohaven. Every week, we dig deeper into regenerative soil science and the timeless tricks that keep your beds thriving naturally.